Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, beautiful humans, beautiful earthlings. Aquarian Anarchy is back. We are live. We are ready to go. I am Chad. You see Marcus and Nico. And with us tonight, we have Darryl Cotton. We'll get to him in just a second. First, we want to remind everybody, 2 shares to speed the spread. Go share this episode right now so everybody can get in here and join us live, join the discussion. Feel free to drop a chat while we're in here. We're also live simulcasting on Libre TV. You can go there. You see the link in the banner down below. We also want to remind you to like, and if you're not already a subscriber, I don't know why, but go ahead and subscribe now and go to our Patreon and become a patron there, become a subscriber to our Patreon. Join the chat. We had a couple of new people join this week. So we are excited to welcome this week's guest, Darryl Cotton. Marcus, I'm gonna let you introduce, because you're kind of like how Darryl came to us. You were working with him with Adam's show, so I'll let you kind of introduce from there. Oh shoot, you're muted still. Hang on just a second. That's me. My bad.
See, I was muted. Chad was trying to shut me up.
Well, hey, look, somebody's got to. No, all right, go ahead, man. Sorry about that.
I found out about Darryl when his media guy contacted me, because as many people know, I also schedule for Adam versus the Man for Adam Kokesh, and he's not only a cannabis activist, but also just an activist in general, trying to solve those problems that the world has. And he's been a very busy man. I've read through a lot of the stuff that information about him, and much of it is just Aquarian Anarchy kind of things. Sees a problem that is in society, such as homelessness, such as food problems, such as cannabis, and says, how can I solve this without bringing big bad daddy government in to solve it? And that's the kind of people we like to have on this show. So Darryl, if you could kind of give us a introduction beyond that about who you are, what you do, and where you see yourself going in the near future.
Well, thank you for having me, everybody. I really appreciate it. You guys got an awesome show, a superb message, and it's something the world needs to hear. So we need to be extolling this from the highest mountaintops and get people to understand that all of our solutions do not come from Washington, D.C. and Sacramento. In my case, I'm a Californian. And simply by doing some of the things that I've been doing here, it sort of snowballs. You know, not only do I have a love for growing food and medical cannabis, but, you know, I like to stay busy. I like to have a purpose to get out of bed every day. With COVID, a lot of people are forced to stay home. And look at all the businesses and the industries that have shut down as a result of that. So in real-time opportunities, I don't know if we covered a lot of this on other shows. Maybe you heard it with Adam's show, but it's called Posse Comitatus. It's when a small group gets together and defends their local community. And it's not always in the Civil War when it first came out. It was built on, you know, arming yourself to defend, which there's a good reason for that too. But that, as a small community goes, you answer to the nearest highest authority, and in most cases that would be your sheriff or your chief of police. And they're recognizing through that relationship that you're not doing anything to hurt the people there, that you're not doing anything to hurt your outer community, and that you're not breaking any laws. But you're there to defend yourself, and you're there to protect yourself, and that means growing your own food. So our design in 151 Farms, that stands for a pound of cannabis, 5 pounds of food for one community. And we set these little flash farms up a relatively short period of time. Within 30 days, we're growing food because it's soilless. We set it up on top of asphalt and concrete, and it not only serves a purpose, it serves a message. And that message is, you know, you've tried to combat homelessness. You've been abysmally failing on that. And as a small relationship with the local population, those that can find a home on your farm, and we use shipping containers and bunk beds, we find a way to bring them in. They participate in the gardens. They're part of our community. They're fed, they're housed, and they learn a skill. And that gives people a reason to get out of bed every day. That includes some of the older people that, you know, might have had conditions that would put them in a nursing home, but they're not bedridden. If they can get up and move, then they got a reason to get up out of bed every day, come feed the fish, come help in the farm. And before you know it, they're far more active. They're involved and they're mentally acute. So I'm sort of a reluctant activist, but now that I'm here, I kind of like the area that we've staked out, and I really love what Aquarian Anarchy stands for. And together, I think we can be heard. And what's funny are the politicians who may have tried to undermine you along the way. Once you're successful at this, they'll be like, oh, well, we were supporting you all the way. That's fine. Let them think that. Yeah. But at the end of the day, we're doing something that really works. And it's unprocessed food. It's bringing the farm to the fork. And the country was built on agriculture. We're reestablishing that connection.
That's awesome. One of the things that we got an echo somewhere. Yeah. All right. One of the things that it reminds me of is that we have a couple of friends here. I live in Indiana. We have a couple of friends. One of them is a guy named Tag Griffin, who we have interviewed as well. And Tag works with a organization called Hearts in Hand that does homeless outreach. Well, one of his close friends is Bill Levin, the founder of the Church of Cannabis here in Indianapolis. And they partner up and try to, they don't use agriculture. They just bring people food and try to handle it that way. I really like the idea, because I personally plant a garden myself and try to be as self-sufficient as I possibly can. I do live in town. I live in a rural town, but I live in town. And those kinds of ideas are things that every community should be striving for, because when we can take care of ourselves, you know, the one problem I would have with what you said is I bet I don't find a single politician that will support me at any time because I'm an anarchist and I just want to take their shit down. But at the end of the day, what you're talking about is real life voluntarism, or actively participating in your community. And as we've talked about in large extent, the best place to do that is locally. And what we can do is we can learn from Bill and Tag, but we can also learn from you and see what we can do here, or in the case of Nico and Chad in their communities, to grow those ideas. And it does look like that the projects that you've started are not only there seem to be just common sense, you know, on how to kind of get that started. You want to like, if someone were to want to do similar things to what you're doing, how would one start?
That's a great question. I just finished an interview with some people in Australia, and what they have there is very oppressive cannabis laws. Okay, so the cash crops, other than cannabis, would be hops, for example, for your microbreweries. There you go. And when I start to look at cash crops, I look at ways that I can monetize that farm, because otherwise you're always looking for the next contribution, the next donation. They're not self-sufficient. And hopefully food prices won't rise to the point that that becomes an issue. But if it does, then that's all the more reason to have control over that. So what makes our farm different is that I developed some ways along the line of not only growing cannabis, but these deep root plants too, like avocado. Avocados can draw 20 gallons of water a day when they're mature. On my system, they draw under a quart. And the reason for that is I use a closed loop system. So imagine riverbeds and all the trees and growth that go alongside the riverbeds, and it's very pronounced. It's very healthy. Well, the same thing applies with my system, where the fish tank is, with the fish waste feeding the plants remotely. I only have to feed the farthest tank, and then it feeds up every tank successive until it gets back to the fish. And I'm constantly running that water. As long as there's solar, you know, the plants are seeing new water flowing continuously. And then at night, well, before I go there, it's oxygenated water. So it's not just water that the roots are drowning in. And that to me represented a eureka moment, because the fish, when they're happy, they're eating, they're active, they're mating, and then you have more fish. So what do you need? You need more plants. So that balance of 151 is not only a pound of cannabis to 5 pounds of food for one community, it's also 1 pound of fish to 5 gallons of water to 1 square foot of media. Nice. I like to say 151 is not just a rum anymore. But people will get that, and they'll think, wow, that is pretty simple. So the methodologies, I've not patented them. I don't have trademarks. Basically, you can go on Facebook and you can see how we do this. But I have grown the best damn plants you've ever smoked, eaten, tasted. I mean, the whole panoply of the relationship with you and the plant is there, and it's done organically. Now, you can co-cultivate the fish too. but I tend to keep them in the system so that I'm not always running a nursery here. But I've had nurseries. I've ran the tilapia, the bluegill, the bass, and that becomes a co-cultivation opportunity as well. So if the day comes where we can't feed ourselves from the supermarket, you need this. Society needs this for a whole lot of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So the next thing that when you're dealing with fish, do you use the fish for food product as well as they get older?
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, as co-cultivation goes, tilapia at about 9 months is fully grown. But they're going to have babies. You could pull those fish and rely on the babies, but then there's this ebb and flow in terms of the amount of nitrites that are in the system. And anybody that's had aquarium fish, they realize the nitrites will rise and that becomes toxic to the fish. Well, what's nice about our system is there's a relationship, a symbiotic relationship between the plants and the fish. The fish waste, ammonia from the urine, is converted into nitrite almost instantly. Then in the rocks, if you've been to Hawaii and you've seen those black lava rocks, they're very porous. And inside that is beneficial bacteria that will eat the nitrites and shit out nitrates. The plants pull up nitrates. So you need that balance. But once it's in place, you basically feed the fish and capture the food grown from the plants. And it's phenomenal. The taste will blow you away. You've never tasted anything like it because it's so organic. It's so full spectrum. And that goes for the cannabis too.
Cool. To get kind of started with what you're talking about, what kind of, and I'll let these guys talk eventually, I promise. But
we're doing fine.
Yeah. But about what kind of money are we talking about to drop into to get started?
Then it's not a very expensive system to get into place. It all goes back about 6,000 years ago, and the Egyptians started moving mass amounts of water and growing with fish to supply the plants with their nutrients, and it worked. So we've built upon that. I've done a lot of things that said couldn't be done. There's huge aquaponic companies out there that you can model their systems, and you'll spend a ton of money, but they're very sophisticated systems, and they require a high degree of specialty training to run them. But my system is very, very basic, and it's very expandable. So being that I only have to have enough power to pump water from that tank to the farthest pump, or what we call tubs, those are our plant tanks. Once you've gotten that furthest tank, you just keep feeding it water, and that water fills that tank up and falls over, catches the next one and the next one and the next one. So it's very expandable, and it's only as limited as to your money and your time commits, because it is a commitment. This is not something that you can drive off an app. You got to be there every day, and you got to kind of pay attention. But your fish, they have personalities. I mean, I've had some of these fish, like a koi will last 200 years. So, I mean, it is a commitment. You're going to maybe not last as long as the koi, but as long as you're around, that's something that's going to require to get fed every couple of days at least.
Great. See, I like the tilapia idea. I don't know if my environment here will do it, but I love me some tilapia. That stuff's good eats. And my big ass likes to eat it. So what we got the picture of?
Yeah, so this is something I sketched out, but I have some fun with it. So you got an urban farm, fish-fed meds, fish-fed food, and the fish running beneath it. And the nice thing about it is the roots in those plants need the fish, and the fish need the plants, because if they don't get those toxic nitrate levels down, they will die. So it's a balance that's not hard to keep up. Once you start seeing healthy plant growth and your fish are active and mating and eating, then you've got the right ratio of plant to fish.
Nice. So you guys got some questions for him? I've kind of stole.
Yeah, go ahead, Nico.
What do you do about cleaning the tanks? Do you just let it get all?
That's a great question. So the solids will always fall to the bottom of the tank, and you don't want to get the solids locked into the fish tubs or the plant tubs, that is, because eventually you'll get this sludge that's, it just makes it a hassle. You got to take it out. So what I did is I started bringing 5-gallon buckets and hanging them at the top of the water line, and then carving holes in the sides of those with filters. So really all you're pulling in is to the tubs is cleaned up fish water. Now the solids can be picked up at the bottom of the tank with just a standard pond cleaner, and they're like $100, and that basically is a little vacuum cleaner sucking the solids out, cleaning them. And that, once you have that, you can collect it and use it as nutrients to your top fed systems. We use what's called dual root zone. So the top pot is 20 gallons, and it just sits on rock. We carve these big 6-inch holes, 3 of them in the bottom of that. Those roots, when they're normally, they would get root locked. They'd get so big in the plants that way they just not have enough room to grow in that 20 or 5 or whatever you're using. But when you have those holes in the bottom, the roots drop through the holes, run through all that rock, and they get enormous.
Right
so
on.
It's a very cool system, and I'm the first one that I know of that's ever developed anything like it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to talk to you after this show.
Well, we do hydro. If you're a hydro grower, for example, Nico, one of the things we can do.
I'm going to get into it. Yeah, I want to get
Okay,
into
if you're growing cannabis hydro, then everybody wants to pump these plants full of nutrients and extra carbon dioxide, higher intensities of light, things that they weren't really seeing in nature. And frankly, you get some amazing cannabis, but you can't do that without a combination of nutrients and high intensity and higher amounts of carbon dioxide. But if you're skilled enough to do that, then you're going to grow 2-3 pounds per plant indoor, okay, with a 30 to 45 day veg. I mean, we do it. But I would say based on aquaponics, there's a relaxation period. You're going to have a longer veg. I want bigger plants, but I have to design my lights. Frankly, I love growing in greenhouse because I can get the best of both worlds. I can control the environment, and I can bring in intensities that are higher than natural sunlight, or maybe not higher, but on a longer term over that 12-hour photo period. But if you can manage a location where you won't get arrested for doing that, see, for me, I'm a medical cannabis patient. And I told the courts, I said, listen, you arrest me now, put me away. But Prop 64, which we passed in California, is for profit. Clearly, it's called recreational. And Dennis Perrone was an old friend of our farm. You can see this on Facebook. He would come through and say, the only way you're going to beat back big corporate pharma, ag, cannabis is in the courts. And I thought, okay, that's fine. That'll never affect me. But sure enough, it has. So I would say what you really have to look for going forward as a medical cannabis patient, that should be priority. So I don't always grow high THC strains. I grow wide, very broad spectrum THC. I create my oils, which are CBN, CBG, CBD, THC. And Delta 9, you'll have a psychoactive component, but our body's endocannabinoid systems are unique, and they really hunger. They miss that broad spectrum cannabis. While that's not always profitable in terms of like what the retail for-profit cannabis dispensary is going to be, the line forms. People that really have neurodegenerative diseases such as lupus, Crohn's, or Alzheimer's, ALS. It goes on. You will find a strain that works for them, and you will get them off of opiates, and you'll get them off of pharmaceuticals. It just takes patience.
Sure. And for me, the primary thing that I'm interested in is I do have arthritis, and now to be clear, I've taken all forms of cannabis as a treatment. I've used CBD, I've used regular THC weed, I've tried just about everything, and nothing has compared as yet to just glucosamine and chondroitin, just to be blunt. The most I've gotten out of weed is to get fucked up.
Yeah.
But I do look for that, and I think your point is well made. Unfortunately, I live in Indiana, and these people are backwood as hell, and it's hard to even get them to keep us. One day we'll have CBD, the next day we don't have CBD. They go back and forth. And I don't give a damn what they tell me. I do what I want. I do what I want.
I suspected that would be the case.
Right. But at the end of the day, if I could grow it, because I do have a relatively good sized garden, I would love to be able to just grow my own and do kind of what you've talked about doing, even if it is my own experimentation. And I think that's what we miss out on when we're not growing it ourselves, when we're not doing it, is figuring it out. You know what, if I mix a little bit of this in there and do a little bit of that, that gives me exactly what I want. Whether you're talking about recreational weed or you're talking about medical weed, doesn't matter. What works for you is going to be different for every single person.
Yes.
So,
which is the reason. Let me tell you, one of the things that I always looked at is with the commercial grower, they'll bring in big tanks of CO2, and the nice thing about like mushrooms, for example, is they emit CO2. So what we want to do when combining traditional and medical cannabis crops is look at other ways of creating elevated levels of CO2 in those gardens too, to where you can take advantage of these higher intensity lights and things. And there's a lot of research showing that psilocybin corrects PTSD, there's short-term memory loss improvements, all kinds of things that psychologically we're prescribing drugs for. that work. So I strongly encourage people to investigate all of that when they're designing a garden, and then look at ways to grow microgreens and things that are very short nature, growth cycles, and highly profitable.
Sure.
Too. So that's what I've done, and I try to encourage people to look at all that in these systems.
Right. And I think the most interesting thing about what you're doing is that not only are you focusing on things like medicine, but you're thinking about food. You're thinking about feeding people.
Absolutely.
And that's really important because, you know, if we continue to trust government to help feed the people, we're going to have a shit ton more of starving people all over the world. Because
you see how they react to DC when there was this little insurgency. Which is still ill-defined as to who and what was going on there. Sure. But what do? They throw up 7-foot walls and Constantine wire. So you're being hypocritical, DC. You know, you're not reacting for the people, by the people, of the people. And that's a problem. So we're not going to live under laws that suppress us, period. I mean, we have a constitutional right to make sure that we live our lives fully and regulated, you know, but not to the extent that it's over-regulated, that we're suppressed. That's one of the reasons I started this to begin with.
Go ahead, Chad. You started to say.
Oh, I was just going to let Nico go because I wanted to ask him something about the growing itself. I'll let you do yours.
It sounds like Nico's ready to start a grow right now. We're cutting into his time.
Yeah, I know, right? No, Nico's in Chicago, so he's.
What part of Chicago, Nico?
I'm out. No, I can't say it. No, it's not that. I live in like the bubble. Before the city, so I'm in like
okay. Well, I come from LaGrange, and I spent my summers down in Mendota. So I was in farm country where we're growing corn. We drop cannabis in the middle of it, and you know, by midsummer, you've got 8-foot tall, 9-foot tall cannabis plants. They're stringy. You know, I guess you'd have to imagine you're getting high off them. But I learned from that this is a pretty resilient plant. And like when the big winter or summer storms would come and knock everything down, guess what's standing up the next day at noon? All the corn's laying flat.
Anything like hemp related is just like, matter of fact, like a lot of things like natural and like from the plant, from the ground. It's very, very durable. Mother Nature is very durable with certain aspects of her offspring, if you will. But for what was I going to say?
I hope I could teach the inner city youth that they got to get off the fentanyl, got to get off the meth. All of those things are so toxic. You don't live past 30. I say drop a gun, pick up a shovel. Let's get you back into the inner city environments where we can grow and where we can turn this into something that's not only profitable, but it's like Beverly Hills can feed South Central. You know, the plant doesn't care. Right. So we got to reinvent this.
Yeah, sure. And go ahead, Nico.
Oh no, I think that if you were to or if messages were to be pushed towards kids to plant more, and it's like a lot more therapeutic, you know. It's therapeutic, and it shows like a sense of discipline. It gives like you said, people in the 151 farms, they most definitely have a reason to get up every morning. So I think if you were to implement these into communities and start getting people more associated with their communities, it's
snowball.
A lot more helpful.
So earlier you were talking about that some of the things that you're facing are court cases. Could you talk about that a little bit and tell us what? Am I stealing your shit?
Yeah, well, I was just wanted to let Nico go, and then I was going to ask because
never mind.
It was still on that subject because this is really important.
Okay,
like when we're talking about because we're talking in a lot of in some ways vagaries, and I want to make it very specific for the people who might want to start this stuff. When you're talking about footprint, like how much space do you need? What type of room do you need? Is this all indoors? Do you have to do some of it outdoors?
No.
What are we looking at to make something like this happen? And then like in terms of like footprint in your home or on your property, what does it translate into in terms of production?
Well, if it's a small grow, it's more a labor of love. But like in Illinois, in LaSalle, there's the West Clocks, the old building there that wasn't being used. It's used now. But we were talking about converting or diverting, that is, some of that Illinois River into a farm inside the West Clocks building where you could do year-round crop production, use as much sunlight as possible, But my background's electrical engineering. So I came at this from the standpoint of what lighting systems we can use that meet ideal outdoor photogenetics indoors. So whatever we're doing, that lighting is going to be critical, and temperature management. So if you're in a place where it's really, really cold, well, on the East Coast, you can actually bring your farm down below grade and then use geothermal heating and cooling to maintain those temperatures below grade. It's a natural heating and cooling system. But you're going to want to bring sunlight in as much as possible so that you're not reliant on, although there are solar systems and things that can reduce your expense to the grid, to run these cannabis farms does take the grid. There's just no way around it. They're highly wattage intensive. And if you're not making the kind of money that should be made to make this worthwhile, then you better have a different source of income, because it is a lot of work. Don't be fooled. There is a lot of work. But on the larger scales, it's actually less work, because you can bring in more people, house them, teach them, and then under a 3 or 6 month contract, when they're done, yeah, you could return them back to the inner city where they'd live on the street, or you move them to the next farm. So there's a lot of old abandoned railroad lines in this country. What we would ask when I find the right partnering teams to do this is that we create more gardens, not less, and we give people a chance to eventually, even from an entry level, they can be advanced academics when it comes to the science of farming, the economics of farming, and then all of the spin-off businesses like the essential oils that have to be extracted. And that's not just cannabis. That can be moringa, all kinds of plants. That once you take that in its essential extracted form, you're getting all the benefits without the downside of the carcinogens. Like when you smoke cannabis, there's over 300 carcinogens. So to those that smoke, great, but don't think that's the safest thing for your body as a whole. It's not. You can eat it. You can use it as a suppository. You can put it on your surface topically, or you can smoke it. And of all those ways that I like to regulate it, I smoke oil because the carcinogens have been removed and it's straight Delta-9 CBD combined that make my psychoact. Well, I have a neurodegenerative disorder that causes seizures on occasion, and it's only nocturnal. But when I take that, I haven't seized for years. And I've seen that with kids. You want to keep away from the THC because their brains aren't developed yet. But there's a lot of research that's been suppressed for many years. It started with Nixon and the Schaefer Commission in like '76. But all that research was suppressed for over 20 years. It's just starting to hit researchers now, and they're seeing the benefits and the broad diversity of that plant. But it's not just that plant. There's a lot of plants that can help to that. Psilocybin's another. So why suppress that information and say, drugs are bad when the pharmacist can send you something that'll addict you, and when they take and cut off that prescription, you're forced to go to the street. It's a very, very poor concept and design.
For sure. And when you start controlling what people decide to do, then how is that going to help them in the long run? One of the things, there is no one but the individual that knows what's best for their body. When I was given I was having some health issues several years ago and was given a steroid because, like I said, I have some arthritis issues. Well, that almost killed me. Literally, I took.
There's a lot of snake oil salesmen out there selling these things. And there's nothing to back them. So the FDA's, to their credit, they do have stringent processes for that. But it's been the Wild West with CBD. And you have people claiming that this can cure all those things. Dennis Perone was an old friend of mine. He's since passed. But he brought us Prop 215 back in like '98, I think. And he became a friend of the farm. If you go to our Facebook page, lots of occasions that he would share his ideas and his thoughts going forward. And the one thing he said is that if people can take control of themselves, it's because cannabis is a medical product first. There's really no such thing as recreational when it can control. These are the three things any medicine can do: is prevent, repair, or prevent, repair. There's another I'm missing. It'll come to me. But when he was saying those things, it's like cannabis can do all of those things. And with our wide range of cannabinoids and our receptors, how we personally interact with that plant is what makes that relationship so unique and so personal. And nothing trumps the medical benefits over the so-called for-profit recreational.
Yeah, not only that, but the like to Marcus's point, when there's, it's not just that it's counterproductive to the person's, like, no one can decide better than the individual can what's best for themselves, even when the individual doesn't know what's best for themselves.
That's right.
And you know that they need help or they need something else.
Exactly.
The worst thing you can do is try to force them to do something against their will. They've got to realize it for themselves, because so often I see people try to push someone in a direction when they're not ready. And all it does is it causes people, human nature is to rebel against that sort of over authoritarian type of.
And the next thing you know, guys, you're addicted. So Dennis had it was prevent, relieve, and repair. Those are the three things any medicine would do. And I started thinking about it. And anytime you're going to take a medicine, it's to prevent, relieve, or repair. So elements of cannabis like CBD are all about repair. But you know where the relief comes from is THC. It makes your body slow down and relax, and turns out this constant bombard of radio, TV, news, and allows you to kick back and relax and give your body a chance to recover. So I became an advocate of him and his message. And he also fought against the Vietnam War and gay rights. You know, he was just an activist. But I told him, here we are in the 20s, and, you know, we're not going to fight smoking joints on the courthouse steps anymore. Those days have failed. So my type of protesting and the way I'm exercising, you know, my voice out there is through the courts and through protesting that brings it to their attention. And it's the small person doing that with a big voice that's going to make a difference, I believe, not rioting in the streets.
Absolutely. And could you talk a little bit more? We started to touch on this earlier, and I was being a dickhole, so Chad called me on it. but
well, we're all over the place, so everybody jump in wherever, I guess.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the thing that is no control. But at the end of the day, talk a little bit more about what you're looking at when it comes to the court systems and where you see yourself going soon.
Well, the way this all came about is I have a property in San Diego. It's a commercial property that was zoned for a dispensary. And people reached out to me and they wanted to turn it into a dispensary. I go, all right, I have no interest in being involved in retail cannabis. I'm a farmer. And if there's a way that we can make that work, go ahead. So the individual that did that was a realtor and an accountant. And he said, I got this. I've got the connections with the city. I'll make this happen. So to make a long story short, the deal fell apart because he never put down in writing what he said he would do by voice, orally. Yeah. And that should always be a tell. Okay. So I said, listen, I'm going to sell my property to somebody else. I got a much better offer at that point too. When I decided to not sell it to him because he just wasn't living up to his promises. And he sued me. And he sued me stating that this little 3-sentence document of his was a fully integrated and binding contract for real estate. And if you've ever signed a real estate contract, there's 30 pages here. You have to go through and check everything off. So I couldn't believe that there would be a case where he would try to argue that was a fully integrated and binding contract. So in an email response, I said, listen, if you would just email me back and say, I'm waiting for the final version of your contract, let me know that and I won't be so concerned. And he sent me back an email that said, no problem at all. That was his exact response. So I'm thinking, yeah, maybe I was overreacting. All right, I'll let him go. Well, he converted that little receipt for 10 grand earnest money into a full contract. Now, any judge, when you're brought a lawsuit like that, would see the email response and see a 3-sentence document from a realtor and say, there's no way this doesn't match, and throw it out. That was in March of 2017. Not only did this judge, he's either biased, ignorant, overworked, or compromised,
or all
not throw it out. Yeah, it could have been all above. He decided to let this go to a jury trial. And it was just me and a buddy lawyer of mine. And we got beat just because these guys put on a song and dance that was guilty of a Tony. All right. And as I saw the jury looking at it, you could just tell they were getting lost in the minutia and the crap that this team of 3 lawyers was throwing at them. So at the end of the day, they were saying, well, you signed this document. Well, what if it's not a fully integrated and binding contract? If there's representations outside of that, then it has to get thrown. The judge realized that 2.5 years in at trial. That's what we were dealing with. So at the long end of the story is I end up taking this into federal court, arguing my civil rights have been violated. And what's happened now is I'm on my 7th federal judge. I operate pro se. That means self-litigated. I'm a plaintiff, and I'm suing everybody. The attorneys, for example, the state court judge is now a defendant in my federal case. And one of the federal judges that mischaracterized what I said, probably hadn't even read my complaint. They just don't read. And I had to name her as a defendant when I took her as a complaint up to the Ninth Circuit, which is our appellate federal courts, the biggest one in the country. Yeah. And Chief Justice ruled that, oh, that just happens. You know, you're going to make mistakes like that, but it shouldn't affect your case. It's like, blow me. So I ended up getting motions. I got these motion to dismisses filed now from all the, and those attorneys covered under absolute or qualified immunity. The judges might be. There's some arguments to be made about that, and doing something immoral or corrupt or that's not entirely legal. It's a fraud upon the court. Why isn't the judge held accountable? So my argument would probably
have an answer.
Well, I know, but I'm going to fight that at a Supreme Court level. Yeah. And here's the beauty of it, because if the Supreme Court won't hear my petition, they'll basically be ratifying an illegal contract. You can't do that. So for a lot of reasons, this has to go in front of the Supreme Court. Don't I want to win my case and get what's rightfully mine and be vindicated? Absolutely. But I think this is a rare moment in time that 100-year law, which or qualified immunity, could be applied at the Supreme Court, and they can revisit that. All the attorneys that filed the motion to dismiss are not covered by immunity. So my next lawsuit challenges the attorneys, names them, because it's frivolous. You can't tie our courts up in that. The only thing that I could say really matters right now is that take this little unique moment in time. You know, obviously I want my win, but I also want to get some clarity and definition on how the courts should be representing us in an unbiased fashion, regardless of the money you have. Just fulfill your legal obligations and make sure that the law is fundamentally addressed in any of these cases, for criminal too.
For sure. And again, you know, I can come up with why they're doing that is because everybody that works for the court works for the government. Doesn't matter which side of that is. The only person, when you showed up as your own lawyer, the only person not working for the government in the room was you. And and so that it is against their interests to allow you to, because I mean, think about all of the things that you've talked about. You've talked about feeding people. You've talked about independence. You've talked about cannabis legalization. You've talked about medicine. So you've got the pharmaceutical companies paying people. You've got
agriculture.
Right. Let's not forget Monsanto's contribution.
Monsanto and Bayer.
For sure. So at the end of the day, it is a big fight, but every little battle counts and every little victory counts. The more that one of the things that I think as libertarians, we tend to screw up is that we want the whole shebang right out of the gate. We want, a world set free today. And yes, I want a world set free in my lifetime. That would be fantastic. But I'll take every win I can. And that's what Murray Rothbard, the godfather of all anarchists, well, maybe not all anarchists, but a lot of them. Yeah, but
a lot of the ones that are alive today,
right, for sure. Murray Rothbard suggested that we borrow a page from the socialists' playbook, and that is take every single win we can. If we can take one win here, even however small, take it, because it builds, and every little win works. And if what I like about what you're doing, there are lots of things that I like about what you're doing, but one of the things is that you're not just attacking this from one area. You talked about the avocados, you talked about the things that are not, taboo, things like cannabis is.
Well, we're proposing solutions.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And they are going to fight back, because I mean, come on, just to one of my own personal issues, if we can't get them to recognize that cannabis is a treatment for PTSD, then I don't know what we can do. These soldiers that have been damaged by our government come back, and they don't have access to the medicines that they need. And they're asking these people to murder people all over the world as tools of this heinous fucking government. And I am sick and tired of them denying them treatment when they get back. And it must.
Well, not only that, but the treatment that they give, like so much of the medication that they're prescribed has suicidal tendencies.
Yep.
And even homicidal tendencies as side effects.
Yep.
And that's like, seriously, like you're gonna, somebody who's dealing with the fact that they saw all that shit like up front in their face. Now you're gonna give them stuff that makes
a good point. A lot of these are false flag enterprises anyway. So I mean, when they're going over and they're dying, you know, I look at this and I say to myself, how cruel can that be? Because you're not even fighting in our nation's best interest. You know,
right?
Now you come back and you have nothing but addictive drugs. Open this up, give them an opportunity, because these people are leaders. They've already shown courage under fire. But if we can get them into 151 farms along some old railroad spur and get them a reason to get out there and take advantage of the technology that we're offering them, that will grow. That will snowball. And
well, and like you said,
all you guys for your help in doing that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, if someone were, for instance, because we have a pretty divergent, our audience is pretty varied, and one of the things that is a massive impact on our audience, from our audience, is we have a pretty large group of Hoteps, and one of the things that they're teaching, and for your information, Hoteps are basically Black conservatives or ish. And one of their primary things is to develop their own communities in order to become, self-sufficient.
Yes.
If some of them were interested in getting this started, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, my concept isn't so much a franchise; it's a partnering opportunity. So I like to look at per state opportunities, and then per county opportunities, and then regional within the county, so that there's just the right amount of farms, and they have to be identical in terms of the way they look, the way people are welcomed in to learn and participate, and see that you can secure the cannabis in those places where cannabis is still legal, but in those states where it's not, there's still an argument to be made for doing this for a lot of reasons, because it's just a matter of time before it becomes legal anyway. It's under what conditions and terms that it becomes legal. So Kamala Harris was the AG in California when it passed as Prop 64 here, and that's an entirely illegal initiative. It was passed in 2016. So she asserted a 10th Amendment right against the Fed, saying that, you can keep your Controlled Substance Act. We know how to run cannabis in California. And that starts to get into secession, like what you see Texas doing right now, too. So now that she's the vice president and she has to swear to uphold the Constitution and federal law, how does she comport what she did as the AG in California to what she'll now do as the vice president? And that's going to be an impossible opportunity to connect those dots. You can't do it. She's working for Boris Jordan, who's the Russian oligarch that runs Curaleaf. And if national cannabis is going to be controlled, taxed, and regulated like it is in California, that, my friends, is a fucking train wreck. We have to get away from that. We have to assert our own independence when it comes to food and meds. And we have to find a way to bring these economic opportunities to our inner cities, where the Black, brown, and Asian communities have been historically and disproportionately affected by our nation's drug laws. Call it for what it is. It's been an abysmal failure, an abject failure. And the time to correct it is now, not tomorrow, not under some new edict out of D.C.
Agreed. And so the answer to your question is, no one is going to call her to the carpet. Nobody is going to question her. They own the media, and they're not going to do anything about it.
And that's a problem, because you got left-right media, but they can identify the problems, but they don't ever identify the solutions.
No.
I mean, everybody with the conscience can identify a solution to the problems that we have. A lot of the problems we have are like very basic to solve. We just overcomplicate it by.
Why riot, Nico? What do we get from the riots, in your opinion? What did we gain?
Ass, to be honest, in my opinion. We've done this before. We've done this song and dance before, and you saw where that got my ancestors. Like, y'all can move way too. You guys can move a lot smarter than just standing out a house with a picket fence. Yeah, it's so much easier to attack them where their pockets are, opposed to saying, "Here, I'm going to buy the paper from your store and this sign from the other guy's store."
Exactly.
And we're gonna picket it. No, that's not how you that's not how you get initiatives done.
Breaking windows, burning buildings, stealing big screens is not going to be permanent change. I can assure you that's not what Dr. King had in mind.
Yeah, no, but what you're doing is absolutely amazing. All the props in the world for you showing people how to not just garden, but using different forms and methoding of gardening.
And I tell people when they come to our fence, you leave your bias, you leave your affiliations behind. So I've had DEA in here, I've had ICE, I've had various gang members, and I said, you all eat, we all eat, you're in. If you eat, you're in. And that covers everybody, regardless of sexual preferences, how much money they have, what religion they have. So if we can manage to do that here,
you called the DEA.
They get off on that part. But what we're trying to do is just say at the end of the day, we got to come together. And if the game's screwing you, you got to change the game.
For sure. And one of the things that is obvious is that the revolution is not going to be televised. They're not going to tell us about it. They're not going to, and if you think that you're absolutely lost, more than likely you're about to win. You know, we didn't see the coming of the fall of the Soviet Union. We didn't see it. And I'm sure that people on the ground in Russia knew it was coming. They saw it coming. Yep. But they're never going. It's never going to be on the nightly news. You know, I remember when California made medical legal, and I was shocked. Yeah. And then I remember when Colorado made recreational cannabis legal. I was shocked. I didn't think it would happen. And now look, you know, everywhere. I mean, in Indiana, for God's sake, I can go get different forms of cannabis. I can't get Delta 9, but I can get Delta 8, and I can get CBD, and I can get a variety of different things for both medical and recreational use. And that wasn't the case before. So I
really got to let you guys know right now, there's some, you know how higher law always takes priority over lower law, right? It's called the doctrine of preemption.
Sure.
The Supremacy Clause in our Constitution. So when the federal government has a law that competes with a state law, if it's challenged, the state law gets beaten. And the one thing about the federal government right now is they're part of the United Nations Single Convention on Narcotics, which has cannabis can be used for scientific and research purposes. Okay, that's it. But it is, as a member nation, our commitment to worldwide cannabis trade, scientific and medical. All right. So you cannot have the feds saying that recreational for-profit is in line with their international contributions. And international law trumps federal law. So as I've argued this here locally in California, you can't tell me I've got to get a license that violates higher federal law. And then federal law can't tell me, because IRS 280E doesn't allow me to take deductions. There's a half a dozen flat out straight reasons there's competition or what do they call it? Conflict between federal and state law. When your international commission, which was just held in December of 2020, states that it will be maintained for scientific and medical reasons, period. So it's hypocritical. We're being lied to. They know what they're doing. And it's really just another way to keep the prison industrial complex running when people would try to do their own thing and not fall lockstep in whatever law that they happen to have in place at the time to regulate cannabis.
Absolutely. And just for my own 2 cents, that whole, going higher is, that's nonsense. It doesn't make sense. I understand that you're right. You're correct when it comes to
the concept,
what they're doing. Yeah, but the whole concept of that somebody in, across the ocean, or I guess it is in New York, but at the UN can tell the United States what they can do, and the United States can tell a state what you can do. The rights start with the individual. You have your rights in your life. You have natural rights. Those were given to you by God or your creator or whatever you want to call it, from birth. And those rights trump every single thing else that there is out there. That's the end of the day.
Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Yep.
That's right.
When somebody tries to get in your family business and you're like, hey, this ain't your business. Get the hell out of here. You don't need to be
involved. In California, for example, now,
it's the same thing.
It's been an absolute catastrophe because all of these big corporate cannabis interests are rushing in, doing, I've seen 1 million square foot grows. Where's the water going to come from? So the last 3 weeks, that's what I've been on. I've been on a crusade to say, why are you making them make all these environmental statements when they're approved for these applications? It's a foregone conclusion they're going to get it because you've already been bought and paid for. But when you never ask them to meter the water, it's simple. It's a $500 meter that would upload your rate of flow to tell us, the people, what is that character actually taking out of our environment. And listen, a year or two from now, when we can't feed ourselves because there's no water, you can have all the cannabis in the world, but you're not going to be able to feed yourself with it. So this is criminal what we're seeing here. I think the World Health Organization and the UN can play some regulatory positions that avoid war and things and gives us all a place to talk. But at least as the U.S. goes, you should be consistent in your cannabis policies at an international level and a federal level. And if you're going to argue as a state that the 10th Amendment applies, then don't force me to break federal and international law by that law. And that's what I'm arguing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and the thing is, I understand what you're saying. I'm just particularly interested in like, I don't recognize governments. I don't. Yeah, they can come take me. That's because they're criminals. Everybody that runs any government, whether we're talking about the state government, the county government, all of those governments, they're criminals. That's all that it is. Like Thomas Paine said, they are no abilities. They have no ability, and like Lysander Spooner said, they are a band of burglars that have no other purpose but to steal your money and kill your children. And that's what government does. And what they're doing with the with preventing you and people like you from spreading your solutions farther and farther, what they're doing is they are increasing the death toll on this planet. And the next time somebody says that, oh, government's here to protect you, I'm going to say, really? Then why are they keeping medicine and food away from people?
Yep. So true. You're spot on.
Darryl has a question for you.
Darryl says, if you could pick your top 5 people to smoke in a session with, who would they be and where?
I love activists. It would have to be like Dennis Perone, who brought us Prop 215 back in '96. People like that were so far ahead of their time. I am so fortunate to be standing on their shoulders where I am today, because I never really thought it would get to this point. And a lot of the activists who want to do this were anarchists. They were libertarians, and they understood what was happening wasn't fair then, and it's certainly not fair now. So we have to set an example. And at 60 years old, this isn't so much for my generation; it's for those that will follow us. Nico and others can show that this is a way it can be done. And if they're to control us to cradle to grave, then we'll maintain the status quo. But if we want to change things, we have to change it from within. All law is local. And this is kind of where we're starting from right now, is doing it at a local level. So that's one. I mean, there's half a dozen other ones that I always admire those that with very little resources want to get this heard.
Oh, no worries. No, I was just going to say, was that only for him? Was that question only for him, or was that for like a pool?
Oh, yeah. I think that was for him. But I mean, if you want to throw a name out there, go ahead. Throw a name.
George Carlin.
Oh my God, yes.
Oh yeah.
we go on top 5 dead or alive. I got it. Okay. All right. So that's just
all right. I got to put it out there, man. If I'm gonna sit down and burn one, you know who I burn one with? And no offense to you, Darryl, but these are my boys. I want to fucking burn one with Chad. Did I mention Chad? Chad, yes, Chad. Chad. I want to burn one with Chad. I want to burn one with Nico. I want to burn one with Darryl. I want to burn.
And the other Darryl.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about Hotep Darryl that was talking earlier. Yeah. And I want to burn one with Frageezy, and I want to get our anarchs together. There's a shit ton at this point, man. I want to get them together. And did I mention Chad?
Yeah,
he's dead. He's dying to get me.
Walking in with your eyes redder than a kid in chlorine pool.
All right, Chad. Do you have anything you want to close with, or so we can let Darryl give his final stuff?
Yeah, it's just real quick to kind of go back to, like, do you know of anything that's like crazy out of the ordinary that would be an anomaly in one state versus another that makes this a lot more difficult or a lot easier? Are there some like superstar states or some really crappy states as far as like being able to do what you do?
No, not really, because even in the coldest winter months, you can keep the fish indoors and you can plumb the systems in or out of greenhouses that expand or contract the ceilings and just regulate the environmental conditions. But it did occur to me, one of the things that requires these farms to be successful is alternative methods of financing them. And most of these urban farms fail because of overregulation, overtaxation, and lack of a game plan that works. So our plan is consistent. It shows you a way of doing this without failure. And another way we attract money is on our tubs. We have like a 3x6 panel. There's 25 across and 25 down, so that local businesses can contribute to your farm by actually buying space on that tub. And let's say someone passes and you want to memorialize them, you can put one of their plaques on there too. So once a year, you buy by the year, and it's only 25, 30 bucks a month. And I sell that through a nonprofit, so that the people that bring that business to us are actually making a commission on the sale, helps them. And that most businesses will continue year in, year out to advertise to show their commitment to urban farming. So one of the places that we're saying the government just get out of our way, let us do this, is that there are revenue streams available that we should be looking at in these urban farms that don't require you to constantly being looking for your next source of income.
Cool.
Okay, Darryl says, but where? So I forgot to press on where. So where would you like to have one of these smoking sessions?
Oh, it'd be in the sand. We'd have to have sand in our toes.
In the sand. Okay, on the beach. All right, all right.
Bob Marley.
For sure, with you.
All right, all right.
So, Nico, do you have anything for Darryl before we let him wrap up?
You said you're in California.
Well, yeah, San Diego, Southern Cal.
I will most definitely be talking to you soon about trying to get something like that in Chicago. Like that.
Yeah, I believe Chicago's perfect for this.
Oh yeah, no, I have a few ideas, but
all right,
this most definitely could intertwine with another idea I've had. So I most definitely will be talking to you and taking up.
Well, I appreciate the spirited and wide-ranging discussions. You guys are bright. You're funny. You're on point with so much of this. Keep it up, because collectively, I think we can make the change this world needs.
Absolutely. So where do people reach you if they want to reach out, like Nico was talking about? And I've got your contact information, but if for Nico, but if they want to contact you directly, where should they go?
Try to friend me on Facebook. I'm near capping out there, but that's 151farmers.org is my website. If you catch me on Facebook, I have a group in there called Band Members. And because some of the biggest problems with media, and that includes in Facebook, is that they want to silence any kind of challenge to the canned arguments that they present. And one of that was to propose that Prop 64 just needed to be left alone and evolve, pass it and we'll figure out what's in it. Well, within a month or two, I recognized that a lot of the people that were supporting it were lawyers and lobbyists and things like that, meant to just chill the antagonisms associated with that thing. So I get kicked out of groups like that all the time, and I have to start my own. Band Members is for those groups. Band Members is the group that the other groups can't have you in there because you raised
band like BANNED.
Correct. Band Members on Facebook.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm pretty careful about who. I mean, I'll welcome my enemies in if they can put up coherent arguments. But if they come at me with just the diatribe, the monotonous status quo, they're not long for band, and they become band members.
Hey, look, if other people can cancel, you got to be able to cancel on your own, right?
For sure.
So are you Darryl Cotton on Facebook? Is that where?
Yeah, I'm Darryl Cotton. You see me there. I also got a 151 Farmers Facebook page where I do a lot of galleries, and you can see what we do in a relatively small yard. And it's something that's designed to be packaged and carried all over the country. And not that you couldn't do this on your own, but if you come through 151 for a modest fee, you become part of our family. And we're going to make sure you don't make the same mistakes I've made over the years, and give us a system that attracts people to come to your farms and visit it just to see what it is and how you're doing it. And that, scales up exponentially.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Yes, and everybody, all those the links. Well, at least the link to 151farmers.org is in the description below, and there's some other information. There's the nomoreon64.org, which I'm not.
Oh yeah, that's a good one, because with that one, I actually took the language that was in Prop 64 and asked lawyers if they would say yes, no, or perhaps to answer each element of it. And lawyers hate yes or no's; they love perhaps. But lawyers will read this and they'll go like, "Are you telling me that was language in 64?" And I'm like, "Yes." I can't answer these questions, because by them supporting it, which many did, it was clear they hadn't read it. Because I always ask them, "Is this is a contract between your client and somebody, another party? Would you recommend they sign it?" And they go, "Of course not." Well, why did you pass that over to the citizens of the state of California? And now Kamala Harris, VP, is going to try to assert some model of that on a national level. And it's really what she's proposing. It's called the MORE Act. Is far worse than what we're seeing in California under Prop 64, and it's designed to put people in prison.
Of course it is.
Yeah. So with that, Darryl said he said, "I'm surprised y'all didn't say at the Capitol." That's actually a great point. Like, that would be great to just go blow down right on the steps of the Capitol and be like,
"Well, they got to take those fences down."
Right. Razor wire.
Oh, you'd be getting all those
land of the free.
Yeah, then they put the National Guard. We got to draw the line somewhere.
I always thought it was funny when they would have like the threats of the government shutdown, and so that they'd go put barricades around the Washington Monument. I'm like, bro, you did more work to shut the shit down than you did when you just left it alone. Like, it's just it's a penis in the middle of the mall, and you're gonna go put a barricade around it.
It's like, Washington's penis.
You spent more money and more time and effort.
Fix all the problems, but if we do nothing, you can expect nothing. So
exactly.
We chip away at it.
Exactly. All right. Oh shit.
All right, Darryl. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Hit me up anytime.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Take care.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
And y'all know the drill. Everybody. Well, I don't know. Y'all want to hang around and talk for a little while?
Sure. If our audience has
we've only been on for an hour, the audience might want to.
I have to.
You got to go. What do you got to do?
You have to go, Nico?
You got to.
I have to get up. I'm in my bedtime.
It's
I get up at 3 o'clock now.
You got the JOB in the early AM.
I get up early.
Look at that. Nico's the boomer.
right now the two old guys are like, let's go, let's talk about weed for an hour.
Man. I get up. I have to run to Target and I have to grab some.
But let's be clear. Nico works a hard ass job. Me and Chad don't have that going on.
Well, I work demolition for people.
Okay, I don't do that. But I did. I rebuilt my dad and I rebuilt a pump skid today, and
wow.
And I drove 3.5 hours home. So I drove an hour and a half to get there too. I was in Texas, drove up to North Louisiana, and then across. Anyway, but all right. We'll let you off the hook. We'll let you slide this time, Nico.
Hey, look,
get your rest.
This is broken.
I'm gonna send you some new headsets. It'll be tight.
Man, look, I'm trying over here. Look,
y'all, if y'all want to just subscribe to the Patreon,
I'm living a boomer life.
Right.
I'm not only living a boomer life. Your boy is like living a vagabond life where it's like living check to check, sack to sack over the back.
Hey, dude, I got you beat, man. I bought a car this past weekend. I got me a new Toyota.
Hey, watch out.
I'm mobile. My other car that's a piece of shit. Well, it's not actually a piece of shit. It's a good car, but it's been troubling me. We take it to the shop this week, gonna be replaced. I'm gonna have 2 cars that are functional.
Look, you're to the thing with the satchel on the back or whatever. So there was this. You don't remember this because it's before your time, but on Saturday Night Live, way back in the day, they had this Deep Thoughts by Jack Handy segment. And one of the things that he said was, like, it's a good idea to just carry a couple of sacks around with you everywhere you go. That way, if anybody ever asks you to help them with anything, you can be like, I'd love to help, but I got these 2 sacks. It's like the stupidest bullshit. Like why would you encumber yourself all the time just to not help people? And it reminds me of government. Like that's what they do. It's like sorry, we'd love to help you, but we're too busy bombing people to death.
Right.
Whoops. So anyway, with that, we want to remind everyone, y'all know the drill. What do? Stay free, my friends. Peace.
Stay free.
Yeah.